Welcome into the Fill in the Blanks podcast. I am Jarvis Davis. I got my co-host with me, Tenitra Batiste. How are you, Tenitra? What's going on?
What's happening, Jarvis? How are you?
I am well. I am well. We have a very special guest here today. My main man, Chris Broussard, Fox Sports
Yeah.
One analyst and co-host of The Odd Couple, joins us today. We're going to talk a little basketball. But first of all, Chris, I think that one of the things that I've always enjoyed is the actual knowledge and the connection that you've built covering the NBA for so long. But how is it that were you able to make that transition from NBA insider into being a everyday co-host doing radio?
Well, it's kind of a natural transition that a lot of writers make. They go from being a reporter or a beat writer to a columnist, if you think in terms of newspapers. So you had the beat writers that covered the team, whether it was baseball, football, basketball, whatever. And then you had columnists who would just write their opinion about the team. They don't have to break stories. They don't have to be at every game. They don't have to chase news, but they just write their opinion about the news. And so I've kind of just done that on television or radio. That was the transition a lot of people made in the newspaper. But now I've made that transition from going from a reporter on television and radio to now being an opinionist or a commentator or analyst on TV and radio. And I've always loved sports beyond basketball. Football is actually my favorite sport. And so I followed the sports. I played them when I was younger, so I know the sports. And so that's why I was kind of able to move easily to talking about these various sports and not just the NBA.
Yeah. And I think move is actually one of the words I want to kind of hone in on, Chris. So I'm going to take it a step back for a second. And I don't know if you noticed, but my last name is Batiste. Your last name is Broussard. So I have to ask a couple questions of you because I knew from the moment I heard about you and started following you, I'm like, okay, where's the Louisiana tie, right? So you are born in Baton Rouge. I was born in New Orleans, but raised in Houma. So we're literally coming from, opposite sides of New Orleans. And I know that obviously moving all across the country, being in Ohio and New York, like you said, a lot of sports influence. But yeah, if you're from Louisiana, you can't help but have a love for football in some way, shape, or form, right? So so that's my question. That's my question to you. Just kind of taking it a step back. How did being being born in the South, raised all over the place, but born in the South, really, as you mentioned, kind of set the table for you as far as your love of sports? That's part one. And then part two of that is when we talk about the fact that growing up in Louisiana, we didn't have a pro basketball team for probably most of your and my I didn't have one at all, by the way, but most of your childhood. How did that love of basketball come through?
Well, I'm a little older than you, so but I was born in Baton Rouge, and all my, like you said, my ties are Louisiana. All my American roots are all in Louisiana. As you know, Broussard is a common name to some degree.
Like
There's a town named Broussard. Yep. The restaurant in the French Quarter, Broussards. There's streets named Broussard. And so my father was born in Opelousas. My mother was born in Baton Rouge. They went to Xavier in New Orleans, the HBCU in New Orleans. Yeah, and I've had, all my aunts and uncles went to Xavier. Probably about 12 Broussards have gone to Xavier that are related to me. And
I know some of them.
Yeah, we have, our roots are down there. But I didn't grow up in Louisiana. We moved from Louisiana when I was a baby. I was like 6 months old, baby. And I grew up more in the Midwest, like Ohio and Indiana. And so we would go back to Louisiana every summer to visit family and all that. But so in the Midwest, football is king. So that's where I kind of, my love for football came from. And then in basketball, I really fell in love with basketball in Indiana, which is big. I moved there when I was 7 years old. And Indiana is a huge basketball state. So, so that's where I kind of fell in love with those sports. And I loved baseball, too, as a kid. Back then, blacks were still playing baseball. and now we kind of, tossed it aside for the most part. But yeah. So I just loved those three sports and played them through high school.
Yeah, I actually got a chance to check out your video, Chris, online where I guess you were training. What you training for, man? I saw the video that you say it was produced. Now, was that your daughter? Was it Lowell?
That was my daughter, Noelle Broussard, who produced it, and she just graduated from University of Michigan. And so she's, she had fun. I'm thankful for her. She did a great job. I was shocked.
Yeah, she made you look good, man.
Like, man, Noelle did a great job on that.
Right,
but it was just fun. Rob Parker, my co-host on the Odd Couple, we go back and forth. If you ever listen to the show, there's a lot of debating between us. And so I just had a lot of fun with it and said, this is how I prepare to knock him out every night, which I do. But
like, now the name of the show is The Odd Couple. Comes on Monday through Friday. So, like, talk to me about how you and Rob were able to kind of build that chemistry. I know you all worked previously at ESPN, but I know once you get into that day-to-day basis, like, how were you guys able to just get such good chemistry?
Man, chemistry is just it's either there or it's not. Now, I think there's things you can do to get better at it. But great chemistry is there or it's not, And in this business, television and radio, there is a big it factor. There's a big either you have it or you don't factor.
Yep.
You look at Charles Barkley. Nobody would have thought he would have become what he has become, but he's just got it. Like, he's not the most technically sound broadcaster by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got it. Kenny Smith, he's got it. Stephen A. Smith, he's got it. Like, there's something about, like, there are people that I can think of, I won't name, but in our business who are technically tremendous. They can come in and out of breaks better than anybody. They never, mispronounce a word. They read the advertisements terrifically. Like, they do everything great technically, but they don't have it. They're dull. They don't attract listeners or viewers, or you know what I mean? Like, you either have it or you don't to some degree. That's a big part of this business. And that's not the only thing, but there's a factor there. And so with Rob Parker and I, to be honest, I was doing a podcast at Fox called In the Zone, and I had several people from Fox come on and elsewhere. But I had Nick Wright, I had Jim Jackson, I had Rob Parker and others. And when Rob was on the show, it went well. I thought it was a good show. Didn't really think anything of it. I didn't necessarily think it was better than when I did it with Jason McIntyre or with Nick Wright or whoever. And one of the executives at Fox Sports Radio said to us, he was like, I heard the podcast. Man, that was tremendous. Like, you and Rob had such great chemistry. I got to get you guys on the radio together. And I was like, okay. I mean, because, it was a good opportunity. And so we started out doing every Sunday, a weekend show. Sometimes it was Saturday, sometimes it was Sunday. And they started us out on that to see how it worked. Was our chemistry as good on the radio as they expected it to be? Was the show good? And after, 5-6 months, they loved it. And then they gave us the daily show. And so, and we have great chemistry. And it's not something we've practiced, we've worked on. I've known Rob for like 27, 28 years. I met him, I think it was 1992 at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference in Detroit. And so we've been friends ever since. And, we respect each other because we know both of us have covered sports at the highest levels. And so I think just the friendship and the respect for each other has helped create that chemistry. And also, it does allow us, the friendship and the respect, to go at each other the way we do. Because if you listen to the show, we go at each other.
Yeah.
Y'all heated up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like heated on the
Right.
show. And but we're always able to, man, brush it aside. That's my boy, you know, it's all love and it's good, you know. But so yeah, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, and it's consistent. It's true to who you are. You guys are the same as you always have been, individually and collectively. I had a chance, speaking of NABJ, had a chance to meet both of you in passing, and the same people I met at NABJ convention, it's the same people I feel like I see coming and in here coming through on air, just that authenticity. But even, you know, Chris, in this environment that we're in, whether you think about the pandemic or you think about, you know, the fight for racial justice and equality, it still has a lot of us, you know, on edge and maybe just kind of thinking about how we're proceeding, especially as journalists, you being on, you know, print, radio, TV. How has all of this really impacted you, if at all, just in terms of how you approach sports coverage?
Well, first of all, I'm thankful, you know, that that a lot of people obviously have lost jobs. So I'm thankful that I've been fortunate to have mine still, both on TV and radio. So it hasn't changed much. I'm you know, I'm in New Jersey, at my home in New Jersey. I'm not in the studio. Most of the Fox shows are in LA. The radio studio is in LA. So during normal times, I'm out there a lot. But I'm able to do everything normally that I normally do from home. So I'm doing television from home. I'm doing radio every night from my home studio. And so that's been great, to be honest. I actually could probably do this the rest of my career, you know, do it from home.
Right.
But as far as the content, you know, especially before the game started again, we were talking, you know, about the racial unrest and Black Lives Matter and all of that. We were talking about that virtually every night, you know, because players were saying stuff. There were storylines coming out related to, you know, the protests and stuff, kneeling and all that. So we talked a lot about, you know, those issues. And that's one thing I like about sports, because I do have a lot of interest outside of just sports. And sports allows you to talk about race, talk about, you know, a lot of other things that impact the Black community through sports, because so many of the athletes are Black and they're dealing with this and that. And so it gives you an opportunity to really share your views on some of these other issues as well. So that's been rewarding.
Yeah, definitely refreshing for us all. Yeah.
Chris, I think that I think that you make a really great point, man. But and the thing that I like about it is as a somewhat young up and coming broadcaster, I think that to be able to see two African Americans on a radio show, because I mean, let's just throw it out there. I mean, what we're normally used to seeing is former athlete, normally Caucasian host. Oh yeah, so you know that's the norm. That's what we normally see in those radio combinations. But to be able to see two African Americans speak from their point of view and have good, bountiful discussions about social injustice and how it affects athletes, I think it's tremendous, man. And I think you guys are really starting and setting a trend going forward to help kind of change that imbalance that we see from people that actually talk about the sports and the people who are actually out on the field.
Well, thank you. And I think Rob and I think we're the first or the only two African American hosts, male hosts, or maybe just two African Americans, period, who are hosting a nationally syndicated show. You know, you had Two Live Stews in Atlanta years ago, but theirs wasn't really fully national. I think they only about 20 markets. We're in like 250 markets. And so I think we're the first two. I'm not positive, but I know ESPN now is going to have Keyshawn Johnson and I don't know if it's LZ Granderson and Zubin Mahente. But and LZ and Keyshawn have done stuff together, but then they've had a third who wasn't African American. So so that's that situation. But yeah, I tell you one thing, man, about Fox Sports is that, and Fox News may be different, but Fox Sports, you're able to share your view, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have people that come from one side of the spectrum when it comes to race. Shannon Sharp, maybe myself, Rob Parker.
Yeah.
Then you have people on the other side. You had Jason Whitlock, who's now gone. But Marcellus is somewhat in that. Marcellus Wiley a little in that, not like Jason, but more conservative in some views. And that's good because we're not a monolith, and people are able to share whatever your views are. And whereas I just keeping it real at you don't see that at every network. True. Some of the networks, you got to have this liberal viewpoint, or you have to have this conservative viewpoint. They don't have people on different sides of the spectrum, and that's especially Black people, and that's what I like. I like that about Fox Sports.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into a little ball talk. Chris, we have the NBA back. I don't know if anybody is more excited about that. I was telling a couple people that we've had on and some that we're going to have on in the future how much FOMO I have, because I'm like, man, I would love to be in, near, through, up and through that bubble. But as somebody who covers the Hawks throughout the season, obviously, the Hawks was, they were a part of the 8, not the 22.
Yeah, they just like you. They not in the bubble.
No, they got some FOMO too. Trust me, Chris. Real FOMO. But of those in the bubble, Jarvis and I were talking about this a little bit before the show. It's we got the obvious over in the Western Conference. You got the 2 LA teams who's going to kind of, obviously the Lakers have clinched, but ultimately it's down to those 2 in all likelihood, maybe with some Nuggets putting forth the effort. Then you got the Bucks, right, on this Eastern Conference side, and you got all these teams that had kind of that hype during the season and even preseason. But when we look at what happened just in the last day or two with the Coaches Association voting Nick Nurse just missing out by a hair of being a co-coach of the year, what about those Raptors? I mean, what do you think about what they're doing? And we understand, no Kawhi Leonard, no respect and all. But what can we expect for them in terms of what their push is going to be to maybe be the representative for Eastern Conference?
The Raptors are great. I voted Nick Nurse. I'm an official voter for the postseason or regular season awards, and I voted Nick Nurse, my coach of the year. So they're well coached. They play hard. When you see them play in person, it is like, man, and these dudes get after it. They're deep. They're balanced. Even if Siakam doesn't have it going, who's their best player, it might be Kyle Lowry. And that backcourt, Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, that's one of the best backcourts in the league. It's underrated, underappreciated, but they're terrific. And so I like Toronto. Now, I have said my preseason pick was Milwaukee or my recent pick was Milwaukee in the East. But I'm watching because Milwaukee's got some issues where Giannis still really doesn't have a go-to shot other than going all the way to the bucket. And if you can close that off, you can kind of make somebody else have to beat you. But Toronto, Miami, those 2 teams play so hard. They're both really well coached. They shoot the 3 well. They're deep. And so I like them a lot. And I like Boston, but I think the teams that play the hardest and have the most heart in the East are Miami and Toronto, and that can serve them well in the playoffs. I think the Eastern playoffs is going to be tremendous, and it's going to be a real battle for Milwaukee to get out of there.
Yeah, I think that East is, like you said, is pretty much wide open. But talk to me about this team, the Philadelphia 76ers. Are we going to continue to see the same thing that we've seen in the past with them, or are they finally going to get it figured out?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to be more of the same. I mean, I really do it because they were actually my preseason pick in the East. And then after watching them for a while, I changed it.
Okay.
That's fair. I don't think they're mature enough. I mean, honestly, they're just not, and they're not disciplined enough, and they haven't figured out a way to maximize Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid together. They're fine when one of them's out there and the other one's not. But when they're together, they haven't been able to maximize them. And so I just think they have some issues. They're talented as anybody in the East. Maybe the most talented starting lineup in the East. But when push comes to shove, when that gut-wrenching time comes, I don't believe they're going to be able to get over the hump. So I would be surprised if they got past the second round. They're capable because of the talent. I'd be surprised if they got past the second round. I'd be shocked if they got to the finals.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we can all agree on that one. And, going back to those 8 teams who aren't in the bubble, specifically, I'll ask about the Hawks. But when you kind of look at what we're seeing now, I think a report came out just last night, Chris, that basically a summer league or bubble 2.0 is probably not likely for those teams. So probably not going to see them until December. But in terms of the Hawks, Trae Young, John Collins, and now they have Clint Capella, what do you think is their upside for the upcoming season?
Well, they got a bright future. I'll tell you that. Obviously, Trae is spectacular. And now it's just a matter of building around him and the type of team you want. And Cam Reddish has shown some signs.
Oh, yeah.
And so they've got a lot of good young players. I think now it's just a matter of watching them develop, seeing who you think works well together, seeing who are keepers. Who are you going to keep to be in that nucleus? You really don't need any more young players. Well, you don't need any more young, pretty good players. If you can get another young superstar, you always take that. But you don't need any more young guys that are pretty good. You need a few of these young guys. You got Trae, who's going to become a star with him. You mentioned Collins, will he do it? But I think it's just a matter of figuring out what your nucleus is, because you want to have a championship caliber nucleus of 2 or 3 players that you're building around, 3 players you're building around. Get that, and then let these guys develop. And, maybe if a certain guy isn't in that group, you can make a trade to get, a young veteran who could fit with Trae and see if you can make that next step. But look, the East has gotten better at the top, but it's still not very deep. So being that it's not deep, I think Atlanta should go into next season feeling like it's playoffs or bust. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily get there. But in the East, if they can make a decent jump, maybe they can hop up to that 8th seed. I wouldn't pick them right now. Obviously, they're not winning a lot of games. But with Trae, I do think the future is bright.
Yeah, and you're probably right, Chris, because oddly enough, they were still in it until about a week before the pandemic shut everything down, mathematically still in it. So, you're right. The East is one of those where it's like, haves and have-nots, no question.
But next year, Brooklyn's going to be great.
Yeah.
Kyrie and Kevin Durant. So that's another team that'll be in it. But so I wouldn't think the Hawks make it, but that should be their goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been kind of waiting on. Because Tenitra and I are always going back and forth because, we cover the Hawks as well. And we have those conversations about, okay, now when they're going to be able to make that next jump? But because, they have a lot of, like you said, pretty good players, and they have a superstar and a budding superstar in Trae Young. It's just a matter of what their front office wants to do, because they know they're going to have plenty of cap space coming up to be able to make some moves. So we'll see how that works. But I want to get you out of here with this one, Chris. You mentioned that a lot of your family was an HBCU grad, Xavier University. She's gonna do that every time I mention Xavier, so I'm gonna try to keep it to a minimum.
I did. Yes.
Well, what is this King movement, and how did that come about?
Well, King is an acronym, first of all, for knowledge, inspiration, and nurture through God. And it's a national Christian men's movement that really is geared towards strengthening men in their daily walks with Christ. So Monday through Saturday, living out your faith with your family, in your marriage, with your children, in the workplace, with your fraternity brothers, sisters, whatever it may be. And so in our case, brothers, because it's a men's group. But we want to just strengthen men so we can live for Christ daily through accountability, encouragement, support, training, and brotherhood. And a lot of times when you're trying to live for the Lord, you can feel like you're the only one out there trying to really live for Christ, especially if you're a little younger. And so we wanted to come together and provide a brotherhood where you knew you had other men who were fighting the same fight as you are and have overcome some of the challenges that you may be facing. Because, you know, that has its spiritual rewards, obviously. But even in the natural, you know, we really want to help strengthen the Black community and the Black family. And we know to do that, we have to strengthen Black men. And so we feel like if we have strong men, we can have stronger families and then ultimately stronger communities and be a stronger people and a stronger nation. So that in a nutshell is what King is about. We do community service. We do evangelism. We have discussion, like we meet every month. We have chapters throughout the country, about 12, 15 chapters, and they meet every month. And we have real discussion, real talk about, you know, because we're not about religion. We're not about just going to church saying you believe in Christ and then, you know, being a religious thing. We're about relationship with Christ and that relationship empowering and changing your whole life, your worldview, the way you behave, the way you think, and the way you live. And so we have real life discussions about what brothers may be struggling with, battling with, and even just the racial situation in this country, how we can overcome it and things like that. So that's kind of what the King Movement is about. If anybody's interested, you can go to our website, kingmovement.com. Also, you can email us at king@kingmovement.com.
All right. Well,
that is fantastic.
And we do, real quick, we do every Super Bowl, we do an event at an HBCU. So in Atlanta, we did one at Morehouse. Last year in Miami, we did it at Florida Memorial University. And we had about 400 boys and men, like high school and college age males at Florida Memorial. And we talked to them about everything from career development and growth and preparation to domestic violence and conflict resolution to spiritual empowerment. And we had a lot of NFL, ex-NFL, ex-NBA players there. And so, and I spoke. And so we're trying to do that, really empower our young men and our older men going forward.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely, that's one thing that I feel like as brothers, we need that kind of circle of group of like-minded people, you know, to kind of fall back on, man, especially in these times, because it feels like sometimes it's the weight of the world on my shoulders, you know, having to deal with a lot of this, and then you just want to talk to somebody that thinks like you, is a believer, and you know, and want to have real world conversations, you know, and how to get through it with applying those spiritual principles, man. So just kudos to you, man, for putting that together, and
Thank you.
and also, man, I want to thank you for joining us today. Like I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Tenitra, what you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to co-sign Chris, because as a Black female and a believer, it's always good to hear about these types of opportunities, these types of movements, just that safe space for our Black men and our believers to be a part of, because there are moments in time where I can't offer what's needed to my significant other because I'm not a Black male. So I don't know every intricate detail of what he's going through. I also have, as I tell my sister all the time, we have 2 little brown boys. You know, my nephews are 11 and 10. It's a crucial time for them. So just to have this type of opportunity for somebody to pour into them who has an experience that only you can share as a Black male, I got to tell you, I just wanted to say thank you and for creating that safe space.
No, thank you. And you're right. Like a lot of times as men, we don't share and you know, we don't talk a lot about challenges and things we may be going through. And that can become destructive, self-destructive.
Yeah.
So
indeed,
it definitely gets, especially with the, you know, whether it was Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, or George Lynch, or George Floyd. I'm sorry. Just being able to vent, you know, a lot of times letting brothers just vent and share. That's been therapeutic for guys.
Right.
Yes.
And so we do need to talk more about that. So I appreciate your guys' kind words about it.
Yeah.
He
Thank
is
you.
Chris
Thank you.
Broussard, Fox Sports 1 analyst, co-host of The Odd Couple with Rob Parker, Monday through Friday on Fox Sports Radio. Chris, man, thanks again, and
Thank
hopefully we can talk
you.
that again sometime down the road once these playoffs get going.
All right, guys, I enjoyed it. Let's stay in touch.
Indeed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
All
See
right.
you.
Appreciate it.